When we look at the geopolitical landscape of modern Europe, we're usually drawn to the obvious flashpoints, the highly contested borders, and the historic battlegrounds. But hiding right beneath the surface of all that mainstream attention is a deeply terrifying geographic reality. We're talking about a narrow, rural stretch of land that military strategists view with profound anxiety. It's a place where the absolute highest stakes of global security are concentrated into just a few muddy miles. Consider this question carefully for a moment. Where exactly would the next global conflict begin? Strategists and military planners, they aren't looking at the vast expanses of Eastern Europe or the busy straits of the world's oceans. No, they're staring intently at a quiet, deeply shadowed stretch of terrain. It's a place that rarely makes international headlines, yet it holds the power to draw the world's superpowers into immediate, catastrophic conflict. To really understand why this place is so dangerous, we have to pull back and look at the macro view. Notice the deeply isolated position of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Now, while these nations are proud members of the NATO alliance, geographically speaking, they are entirely cut off. To the north and east lies the vast expanse of Russia. To the south and west, the rest of Europe. And connecting them is just a single, fragile thread. The Baltics are profoundly isolated from the rest of the Western alliance. Now, zooming right into the specific geography, the terrifying reality of the Suwałki Gap comes into very sharp focus. It's a narrow corridor consisting mostly of dense forests and farmland connecting Poland to Lithuania. But look at what surrounds it. On one side, pushing in from the west, is the heavily militarized Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. On the eastern side is Belarus, a staunch and deeply integrated ally of the Russian Federation. This choke point is literally wedged directly between hostile territories.
The visual contrast found in this region is honestly staggering. To the naked eye on a quiet morning, the Suwałki Gap is just a peaceful, rural expanse of farmland and tranquil homes. It's a total facade of tranquility, because gouged right into the earth are deep, muddy tank tracks, serving as a stark reminder of the immense weight of heavy military armor operating just out of sight, constantly shadowing the daily lives of the civilians who live there.
What was once an open border has completely transformed into a heavily guarded, militarized reality. Barbed wire, concrete barriers, and armed watchtowers now cut through the freezing mist of the forests. And this isn't just a border. It represents the single most dangerous logistical nightmare for the Western Alliance. Trying to supply or defend an area with such constrained geography against overwhelming adjacent forces, well, it's a scenario that keeps military commanders awake at night.
65 miles. That is the entire width of the Suwałki Gap. It is a terrifyingly small distance. In the context of modern mechanized warfare, 65 miles is virtually nothing. In fact, military analysts calculate that a coordinated, multi-directional military push by hostile forces could completely close this gap in a matter of hours. That is long before any substantial international response could physically arrive to defend it. If this muddy, deeply forested route is ever actually severed, the grim scenario we just discussed becomes an immediate reality. This dark path is the only land connection tying the Baltics to the rest of the NATO alliance. If hostile forces were to link up across these woods, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania would be instantly and entirely cut off. There'd be no route for Allied tanks to roll in, no path for land reinforcements, and absolutely no way to retreat. And the vulnerability here extends far beyond just troop movements. It directly threatens vital civilian infrastructure. Running right through this quiet forest is the Rail Baltica line. This isn't just some transport route for goods and commuters. It's the absolute, undisputed lifeline for three sovereign nations. If the gap closes, this steel artery is instantly severed, strangling the exact supply chains that keep the Baltic states functioning.
Alongside the rail lines is the Via Baltica highway. Winding their way through the dark forests, these physical conduits are literally all that NATO relies on. They're the only physical supply arteries available to move heavy equipment, ammunition, and humanitarian aid. When you picture a single train moving through that pitch-black wilderness, you really begin to grasp the sheer fragility of this logistical link. If this line goes dark, the Baltics go dark with it. Because of this extreme vulnerability, the skies above the Suwałki Gap are rarely empty. The area is subjected to constant, active monitoring. Drones and advanced intelligence assets are continuously tracking the extreme military buildup occurring just over the borderlines on both sides of the corridor. Every movement of armor, every single change in troop rotation, and every radar signal is analyzed with absolute scrutiny. The tension here is constant and it is measurable. And what that surveillance reveals is an overwhelming existential threat. Just look at the weaponry stationed along the coast in the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. This territory acts as a heavily armed forward-deployed fortress pointed directly at the western edge of the Suwałki Gap. It's not merely a defensive outpost. It is a massive offensive staging ground loaded with civilization-altering military hardware.
Let's actually break down the exact nature of this military threat. Stationed within Kaliningrad is Russia's incredibly powerful Baltic fleet, and they're backed by land-based defenses that include highly advanced nuclear-capable Iskander missiles, missiles with the range to strike deep into European territory. Furthermore, military forces routinely conduct joint exercises, simulating the precise, coordinated movements required to sever the Suwałki Gap. So this capability is not theoretical, it's actively practiced, and it's deliberately displayed. For NATO commanders, this creates the ultimate nightmare scenario, the two-front threat. From the west, the fortress of Kaliningrad provides a launching pad for advanced missile strikes and naval blockades. From the east, Belarus offers a sprawling, integrated staging ground for massed infantry and armored divisions. A simultaneous crushing pincer movement from both sides would instantly overwhelm the 65-mile corridor, permanently slamming the door shut on the Baltic states.
Faced with this terrifying geographic and military reality, the alliance had to develop a mitigation strategy. NATO has deployed multinational battle groups in what's known as the Enhanced Forward Presence. These highly trained soldiers are positioned right at the edge of the border, operating day in and day out in the mud and the snow of the corridor. However, when you dig into the true nature of their mission, it's incredibly sobering.
These troops are actually operating under a strict doctrine known as the tripwire defense. It's absolutely crucial to understand this definition. A tripwire force is a relatively small military presence. Its purpose is not to successfully stop a full-scale, multi-front invasion because it simply lacks the numbers to do so. Instead, it's deployed to deter aggression by guaranteeing that if they are engaged, it will automatically trigger a massive, alliance-wide military response.
The soldiers that make up this tripwire are drawn from a very specific coalition, including forces from the United States, the United Kingdom, the German Bundeswehr, and other allied members. The strategy is grim, but it's exceptionally clear. Any hostile attack on this small strip of land instantly kills American, British, and German soldiers. By shedding their blood, it effectively forces their home nations and the entirety of NATO into a direct, immediate, and catastrophic global conflict.
Which brings us right back to the intense, almost surreal juxtaposition that defines the Suwałki Gap. On one side, you have a place where farmers tend to quiet, golden fields, and life continues as it has for generations. On the other, the dark, looming shadow of civilization-ending weaponry, poised just beyond the horizon. It is a quiet fault line, where the tranquility of the present completely masks the immense, grinding geopolitical pressure building just beneath the surface. The sheer fragility of this 65-mile corridor literally cannot be overstated. With deeply entrenched forces staring at each other across narrow clearings, constant drone surveillance overhead, and nuclear-capable missiles on high alert, the margin for error is exactly zero. A rogue command, a misunderstood radar signal, or a single tactical miscalculation in the Suwałki Gap wouldn't just result in a localized border skirmish, it would alter the course of human history forever.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, and you consider the maps, the weapons, and the geography we've analyzed today, ask yourself this haunting question. What is the true cost of a single mistake in the Suwałki Gap? It's a grave reality that world leaders have to grapple with every single day, as the fate of entire nations balances on a muddy stretch of road spanning just 65 miles.